Good afternoon, CCNY students. So, this will be a tutorial video for the CUNY Academic Commons platform. And unlike most of the tutorial videos that I've created for you and my other class, this is just going to be kind of a one-take thing because I'm going to be walking you through the process of creating a website. And as a result, if anything goes wrong, if I forget how to do something, you're just going to end up seeing me work through that in real time. You may also see my partner in the background. She'll be walking through the frame, I'm sure, because, it's a tiny apartment and we, like you, are still in lockdown. So the end goal of today's tutorial is to familiarize you with a handful of basic elements for the CUNY Academic Commons platform. Some of it's really, really basic, like logging in. I can't walk you guys through registering for it because I've already registered for it, but hopefully that's fairly intuitive. Be sure to do that early. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can do at the last minute. You can study for a chem test at the last minute. You can cram for a math test, and you're probably going to do okay. Hopefully most of you have realized at this point that if you do work at the last minute for this class, you don't do well. So don't do it. Register today, okay? There's a button here. It says register. Get in there. Go for it. Once you've registered your account, you'll want to log in. Then I'm going to go through how to do that, how to create a website, how to organize a website in a way that allows you to easily create a portfolio. I'll talk about some of the technical differences between different aspects of the website, like what differentiates a blog post from a web page on your site. We'll also talk about menu organization and how to invite me as an administrator on your site. You will actually need to do so in order to have your work graded. I'll need to be invited as an administrator on your website so that I can access it, and also so that I can share access with other people in the English department because we're still collecting data on all of you guys. We'll also talk about text formatting, image integration, and kind of just, hopefully work through a few issues while we're doing that. If you do have any questions after today's video is completed, just let me know and I'll make follow-up videos on that subject. So, step one, let's log in. So, username and password. This is distinct from your English department not your English department password, sorry, your CUNY password. This will be a password specific to the CUNY Academic Commons platform, so you'll need to set up a separate account for it. But you can set up a separate account just by using your CUNY email. So, and it worked. Cool. So once you're logged in, you will see a pretty substantial drop-down menu up here that will have all of your portfolios. Now, as you can see, I've been using this for a few years, so I have like 100, maybe 120, 150 portfolios here. So I'm not going to dive into that. When you mouse up here, you'll probably just see like one or two. If you click on this, you'll also see a list of your sites, which is totally okay, but it is a lot easier to create a site just by mousing over the option here and then clicking on to create a site here. So here they'll talk about groups, site, and a connected group and site. Since I want you guys to kind of like do this in the easiest way possible, and we're not creating like a learning community here, we're just creating a portfolio. You'll want to just create a site for this purpose, and you'll just need to create a domain. So here I'll say okay. So you'll have to sort of run through all this stuff. One neat thing here is that you can actually choose a license for your site. Um, it defaults to Creative Commons share and share alike. Uh, if I were to try and give you guys a talk on this, it would last about an hour. But this is neat because it basically means that people can reference your website freely. And yeah, it's just kind of neat. So, uh, in the past, you used to have your website defaulted to CUNY Academics Commons privacy only. The privacy options are just a way for you to determine who can actually look at your website. I would actually recommend clicking this one. I would like my site to be visible only to registered users of the CUNY Academic Commons. That will make your site easy to access for other people to review. You'll be able to workshop it with your classmates without having to do a bunch of stuff in the background. Um, you could also do the users I add to it or visible only to its admins thing. Both of those would effectively preserve your privacy. However, um, yeah, whatever option you choose is fine. It's just important to recognize that you should be very careful whenever you put a website with any personal information out into the public. And in this case, I actually strongly advise against that. I would say you want to close your site off to just the CUNY Academic Commons population and possibly limit it to just admins, since you'll need to add me as an admin to your site anyway in order to get everything working. So, you'll notice there's a bunch of different templates here. I actually recommend just using the default template, although there's nothing wrong with the academic portfolio template. The academic portfolio template will just have a bunch of stuff that you need to strip out. These are essentially they're just sort of really stripped down starting places for a site, and you'll customize the site regardless of which template you choose as your process develops. So we are creating a site with a default template visible only to registered users of the CUNY Academic Commons site. And we filled in all this metadata here. Whee! So, we can invite others to join the site or just go to the site. I'm actually going to go to the site because while I am going to invite people to join this site as time goes by, I wanted to show you how to do so from the page. So if you mess up during the initial process, you don't, have to freak out about it. So the first thing you'll notice here is that we've got this little hello world thing on a home page, and there is a single sample page afterwards. So when I was talking about the difference between blog and page, this is actually what I was talking about. So if we go into the dashboard of this, you'll see that this dashboard lists posts and pages and comments. Comments and posts are blog elements. So by default, your CUNY Academic Commons webpage will have a blog set up on the front of it, at least for most of the templates. And that blog is essentially just a ticker, kind of like Twitter, right? That chronologically puts sort of material at the top, and newer material at the top, and older material at the bottom. And it's often a little bit difficult to navigate. Once you're in one of those posts, it's often difficult to click around to other ones. It's really difficult to actually visualize just how your material will appear to your audience using a blog like that. So I really recommend using the pages function to actually uh, present your material to your audience. Pages are a static element. That means that they don't change. They are always going to look the way that you design them to look. Adding content to them won't change their appearance in an unforeseeable way. And you'll have a lot more customization options when you actually sit down to use a page than you will when you sit down to create a blog post. So, went over that real quick, and I'll go over creating new pages and eliminating the blog posts from your site. Although there's no way, I think, to get rid of them completely. At least historically there wasn't. Sometimes they add new features, and it's always new to me. But yeah, you'll just kind of like bury that weird page as time goes on. The first thing I want to go over, though, is how to add new users. So if you look here, you'll see that it says users, right? And then all users, add new, your profile. You You can also get to the new user thing from the new tab up top, scrolling down to user. But from here, if we go to users and I just click on it, then do add existing or add new. So I'm going to do add new, and then you can actually just look people up by their name. So in this case, you would just look me up by my name, and then do so that way. You can also invite different CUNY faculty and sort of like class members using their emails. So here it would be mgrove@ccny.cuny.edu, right? They're both identical. And if I click next, you can see that I have all these sites. You'll only have the one, but the first thing you want to do is click on the role that is presented here and switch me over to an admin. The reason I ask you to switch me over to an admin is twofold. First, and this is kind of the big one for me, there are occasions where I will have to share the material you produce in this class with other members of the English department. Specifically, faculty collect student portfolios to review them to make sure that you guys are producing work that's more or less in line with what the university wants you to produce at this point. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it is that if you have a problem and you want me to help you, it's way easier for me to do that if I have an admin position on your site, because then I can go in and actually modify things in the back end. I can see everything you're doing. Having an admin position on student sites, especially the sites of overwhelmed students who are having trouble with site design, has allowed me to help students pass who would have failed otherwise because they created all their web content, but they didn't actually link the content they created to their site. They just had it all on the back end without actually letting people ever get to it. That's happened in multiple classes, and those students didn't have like amazing portfolio grades, but they did pass the class because they had done the work. So for you guys, just make sure when you're adding me as a member to link me as an administrator. You click next, you'll see that it's pretty straightforward. You can add a custom message. You can even say, hey, let me know when you get this, Professor Grove. You don't sound like that. I sound like that. If you just click submit, it should be pretty straightforward. Once you've done so, you'll be able to verify that I've actually accepted your invitation by looking here and looking at the administrator tag and seeing my name there. That's actually how I'm going to register attendance for today's class. So once you've done that, you'll be all set for this particular session. Cool. All right, I'm going to start scratching stuff off of this lesson plan. Cool. Okay, so let's click over to posts. So if we look back on the site itself, you'll see that this little hello world thing here is there. And one of the reasons I actually discourage you guys from using posts is because when you use a post to actually create content for a site, it tends to just push everything else down chronologically, and rearranging those elements isn't that difficult, but it is an extra step that is really unpleasant, and it also kind of isn't aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't make your site easy to navigate if you just have a blog with every like paper posted, one after the other. So if I were to publish this little post, let's refresh this page, you will see that all this does is just force the next entry down, which again isn't the worst thing in the world. If all your content is on your site, then you're probably going to be fine, but really it's not a great system for actually creating content for your users to navigate. So what I'm going to do now is hop back to this. So here could probably do things like shift up and shift down, but what I'm going to do instead is actually trash each of these. So now we go to this site again. The home page, which functions as this sort of like blog, is now completely empty, which means that we no longer have any content on there. And that's exactly how I want it, because what I want to do instead is actually create a page. So what pages are they are essentially static elements in a website that don't change. They don't have that weird shuffle effect. And pages can be linked to a central navigation bar like this, and you can actually make it really, really easy for a person like me or another instructor or just yourself to actually navigate from assignment to assignment using pages instead of a blog. The blog system is notoriously kind of like bad at helping you find what you need to find, whereas the pages system is really, really handy. It allows you to sort of move between assignments fluidly and customize how those assignments appear in reference to one another, and really zero in on how you want material to look in a way that I think is much easier than that WordPress blog framework that you saw a few seconds ago when I was messing around with the post framework. Okay, so here I'm going to add a new page, and as you can see, kind of looks similar, but once we actually get into this, it will be a lot more sort of like customizable. So let's just call this research paper, okay? It's always fun to watch someone type a large block of text, isn't it? So here I am creating a research paper mock post. I'm using the block editor. So one of the interesting things about this is that if you use the default editor on CUNY Academic Commons' site, you can create new blocks, and those blocks can be used to create sort of page breaks, image, text. You can even take an image. I think I've got, do I have puppy pictures? You know what? I am going to just find one right now. Oh, okay. Yeah, that one's going in there. So I'm going to save this image to my desktop. And then we're going to go over to here. And I'm going to upload a puppy in a teacup. You can also add things like captions. So the block editor actually makes it really easy for you to add material that kind of just aesthetically fits with a website's framework, and you can even just copy paste a paper into this, and it'll probably look fine. I really recommend using the block formatter for your web native compositions. So stuff like the meta text, where you might be inserting images of class notes or screenshots of communications with me or your research papers. Um, those are frameworks where the ability to do the stuff that I was just showing you here are really handy. Whereas if you were to use the document system, you might have a slightly easy or slightly more difficult time actually formatting that. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but a cat is asking me to let him in. So in true guy that is streaming stuff fashion, I'm going to go deal with that. I'll be back in 10 seconds. And now you guys know why I will sometimes have to take multiple takes to create a given video. Alright, so I'm just going to pull in another image to demonstrate how to actually upload and include an image again. As you can see, I downloaded the image that I had put into this page with the teacup chihuahua, and then just uploaded it from my desktop. You can also copy the image location. That's what I just did here. And insert an image based on its URL. And as you can see, it works fairly easily. And you don't have to clutter your hard drive with stuff. If you're using open source and stock images, this is actually a pretty good move. I'm not going to check the copyright on like images, but really you probably shouldn't be using random stock images from the internet for your portfolio. First of all, why make it harder for yourself? And second of all, the things you want to include are usually images of work that you did in the class that you can then use to prove that you engaged with the course learning outcomes. I have a feeling I spelled Ermagod wrong there. Sorry, guys. I'm getting older. And as I get older, I become less meme literate. So what I'm going to do here is publish this research paper page. And then if I view the page, you'll see that it is automatically a part of my menu bar. And that is because if we go to dashboard, and I believe, yeah, appearance, the menu section, there are some cool options that you can use to kind of like get your menus just right. So usually things are added by default to new menus. Yeah. And you can also use these tools here to move items up and down in your menus. You can even get rid of certain pages. For instance, here I'm going to actually remove the home page. And then I'm going to take sample page and actually place it over here to the left. So it becomes a sub-item of the research paper item. All right. And now if I refresh this tutorial site, it is currently, is home still there? I guess because I'm using a default menu. That would make sense. Okay, so I'm going to create this menu. There we go. So menu settings, automatically add new top level pages to this menu, display location, primary menu. So now if I save this menu, yeah, you will see that this research paper is here. If I mouse over, sample page appears beneath it. Why would I do this? So, creating a menu makes your page easier to navigate. So what I just demonstrated here was how to create a really, really simple rudimentary page and then create an underlaid page. So if you were to, let's say, post your research paper, but you wanted to post your research paper draft along with it in order to show that you composed multiple drafts of a given assignment, one really easy way to do so is to create this kind of nested menu structure so that you have all of your drafts in place without making your top level menu especially crowded. So here, the research paper is kind of your default item, and then beneath that you have the sample page, which let's pretend it's a research paper draft, just for fun. Um, so it might seem like that's like kind of unnecessary, but I think you'll find that as you add more material to the site, it will begin to get crowded. By the time you finish, you should have a minimum of 5 items on your main page's menu. Um, One thing I do want to point out, I would not recommend creating empty pages that you can click into that will essentially serve as gateways to a menu. For instance, let's just create a new page here. Called research paper stuff, and publish that. And I'm actually going to go back to the default menus, go to that menus section header, and I'm actually going to put research paper stuff there. Alright, if I save that menu and we go back here, click through, you'll see that suddenly, while it might look cleaner in a certain way, if you click on this, you're essentially exposing your audience to a blank page, which can be a bit of a red herring. So I really recommend using nested menus, usually to follow the final draft of a paper, and then using additional sort of nested sub items in order to indicate drafts of that paper, so that you call attention to something and you don't have dead space on your site. If you end up organizing things in a way that involves having holder pages like that, sort of these blank pages where nothing's happening and you're just using it as an organizational item in a menu, it won't impact your grade. I just think it's kind of unnecessary. It's like an extra step you don't need to do. So I recommend not doing it. Okay, so I'm actually going to now remove that and remove that. And go to pages and delete both research paper stuff and sample page. Whoa! Alright, so now I'm going to create one more new page. So the self-reflective letter is the probably most important assignment in your portfolio. It should make up the bulk of your portfolio package, and it's sort of what you want to spend most of your time on while you're crafting your portfolio. It is also at times the thing that students struggle with the most because a lot of the writing you engage in an environment like a freshman writing class, or in this case, like a slightly upper level freshman writing class, um, is it's kind of cloaked in artifice, right? We're asking you to write to an audience that you're kind of imagining that you want to make a case to, and that is, kind of normal for how you behave in school. But this is kind of pushing you towards a new framework where you're writing towards audiences that genuinely want to hear what you have to say, and you don't need to have that artifice in place. And as a result, students often struggle with it. Um, but it's actually the most important thing because you can have a terrible time in this class, you can struggle with every single paper, and you can still get an A on your portfolio if you can honestly recognize what you've done right and wrong in your writing and what you need to do to improve. Like, if you feel like you have a sense of those things by the end of this class, you're probably going to do better than you think. I was talking to one of you the other day, and I mentioned that you can get like a C on every paper and get like an A minus in the class overall um, because of how the grading is set up. And the portfolio is a big part of that. Like if you get like a C plus, a B minus, and a B on all of your papers, and you write a banging portfolio, and you do everything else, like you've done all of the discussion board posts, you've attended all of the virtual lectures by posting something into the comments section, you'll probably end up doing pretty well in the class. So the self-reflection is really key to that because it gives you the space to demonstrate that you understood what was happening in your work, even if you don't feel like you had time to successfully address all the concerns that you had with your own writing. And I think that's a key thing for people to bear in mind, that this class is not about producing a piece of writing, a singular piece of writing that is especially powerful or effective. It's great if you guys do that. It's a good way to get an A in this class. But my end goal is to make sure that you guys understand how to self-correct your writing in the future, because no one ever really stops doing this. Whenever you write anything, all the processes that you're developing in this class are processes that you'll probably employ in one manner or another in other classes moving forward. And as a result, um, it's really not about having like the best completed product. It's about demonstrating that you understand how to effectively create that completed product, even if you didn't successfully do so, because that indicates that you'll have the capacity to grow and develop that way in the future. Um, Trying to think of a good parallel, but the only one that comes to mind is the "I'm not racist but" thing. Um, that works, I guess. So I think everyone's heard someone say, "I'm not racist, but," and then they immediately follow that up by saying something really racist. I had a student in one of my classes say, "I'm not racist, but I don't care about Chinese people." When I recommended that she try and look into that to find out about the history of racial discrimination in the United States from a new perspective. That is an example of an incredibly racist person who did not want to find out that they were racist. So, yeah, when you guys are working on your writing, you want to show that to some extent you had this sort of capacity for self reflection, even if it doesn't totally land. If one of your friends makes a dumb joke and then they admit that that joke was stupid, you're not going to think that friend was racist the way that you'd think someone who seems utterly unaware of their own predisposition or prejudice would be kind of offensive. Um, yeah, I hope I didn't make that too real, but it feels like the realest parallel I can actually construct here. So the role of the self-reflection letter is really to foreground that development and in turn give you a space to talk about both the goals you successfully addressed in the class and the goals that you didn't successfully address in the class. And I actually recommend that you make it the first thing that people see as a result. Oh man. Sorry guys, I am zoned out today. It's a bad time for me to do a tutorial. Okay, so um, I'm going to look at the advanced settings here. Nope. Go over that in a second. I'm just going to publish this. and then we'll go over to view the page. And as you can see, the self-reflective letter and the research paper are both hanging out there. Now you'll also notice that if I click on the site title, I go to the home page, and I've actually deleted the home page from all of the menus, so I'm just going to like an empty blog that no longer has any function. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to go to, let's see, I think it's appearance. There we go, yeah. So if you click on the appearance section of your dashboard, you'll see homepage settings. And by default, your homepage settings, at least for some of the templates, are set to your latest posts. What I'd actually recommend you do is instead set them to a static page, and I'd recommend that you set that static page to be your self-reflection letter, the meta text that you're creating. That way you will always be looking at this, or you'll be forcing, I should say, your audience to look at this letter when they first arrive on your site. And you won't really have to worry about navigating with that blog thing anymore. Yeah, so I feel like that is fairly straightforward. Let's just visit the site to make sure it's still there. Okay, yeah, okay, we're good. So if I click on the site now, by default, I go to the self-reflective letter page. Self-reflective letter is still like kind of homed to this URL. And then if I click on the research paper subpage, I get this cute little thing filled with different dogs. And then I can click through to the self-reflective letter by clicking on either of those elements. So, right now we've kind of created or covered creating web pages, creating a home page, organizing and rearranging menus, and how you can create nested menus that sort of fit into one another. We even covered integrating images into your texts a little bit. The last thing I'm going to cover, so that this doesn't get too ridiculous, is reformatting and messing with text. So to that end, let's go back to the dashboard. By the way, guys, you'll notice that I mouse over and go to the dashboard on this thing a lot. That's because the dashboard is basically where all of your customization stuff lives. Once you get to the dashboard, you can usually mess around with things as needed and create some sometimes pretty neat things. So when you're actually looking at pages, you can either go into the classic editor, which creates something that looks like this, or you can go to the block editor. I actually really like the classic editor sometimes if I'm just going to do like a text dump, for instance. It can be really nice to do that. But I'm going to go back to the block editor so you guys can see why you'd want to use that. Because I think you all know what the text editor looks like and what it's there for. So one of the things the block editor allows you to do is really play with text and sort of like move disparate pieces of text around in a way that lets you sort of make everything modular, which can be really cool from a design perspective. So that's one neat trick. Another thing you'll see that this is kind of stripped down, right? You've got things like alignment, you've got bolding, all that text stuff. You can, if anyone knows HTML, actually do things like post inline code. Changing fonts, surprisingly difficult here. But we can cover that in a second. I did want to point out that you can do things like shifting background and text color. So if I were to, let's say, shift the text in this to blue, and then shift the background here to that deep shade of magenta, update that. Let's just see how that looks. Oh, that's hideous. And this is an example of what not to do. So I know that sometimes you'll be tempted to customize a site in a way that makes it look pretty or unique. And by all means, go for it. If you want to put like a cool header image on, you can do so by going to dashboard and then header. our dashboard appearances, and then header. You can set like a static image as your header, like the aforementioned puppy. And now that's going to appear on the top of everything in this web page. But, you know, choosing font colors like this just makes your page less readable, can actually cause eye strain and annoy your readers. And I know it might seem weirdly immature for anyone to ever complain about that, but the reality is that your professors are all human beings and that they kind of have all the same quibbles and qualms that you do. I appear to have lost my menu on the side. Okay. Huh. I'm not sure how I did this one, guys. Not sure how I did this one. Alright, you know what? I am going to switch back to the pages section, enter the classic editor, and work on normalizing all this stuff. Okay, so from the classic editor, I am already a little bit more comfortable with everything. As you can see, the text color I can set up here, just default it to black. I can do things like shift background color, though I need to double check how. There we go. So clearing formatting is a good way to get rid of weird stuff that you're having trouble finding. That's always fun. So this is going to sound like a weird thing to worry about, but I'm actually having trouble finding different fonts, which for me is a little bit frustrating because I'm a font nerd. I'm going to see if I can find that before I end this, but you can actually do stuff like customize text color from here in a way that's often a little bit less aggressive, like using this deep blue, for instance, might make your page seem a little bit more distinct and might make it sort of like, what's the right way to say it? Feel more like your own thing. And as you can see, even a small change like that actually makes something much more readable than using that kind of like bright color on a fairly bright font combination. Really, this is just kind of like basic visual design stuff. I'm just showing you how to customize it. That's the preview section. So I'm just going to update this to make things a little bit less crazy. And then I'm going to see if I can find a font somewhere in here. So I'm going to go to Appearance, Customize, and see if... Okay. Do a background color for our page. That should probably feel vaguely nauseating. You can shift around your header text color. That becomes, in this case, a deep ochre. Now published. One thing I would recommend is, by default, your website tag will be just another CUNY Academic Commons site. So, yeah. If you just alter that, it can be an easy way to, again, differentiate your site and demonstrate your aptitude for customizing your own web page. So that can be neat. I'm going to go to Appearance one more time. Use header. No, looks like, huh. looks like I'm going to have to do some messing around before I can actually go over how to actually shift fonts, which feels like something I should probably be able to do much more easily than I can. I'm sure one of you guys has probably already figured out how to do it while watching this tutorial, and you're probably a little bit embarrassed of me right now. So, yeah, that was weird. Okay, so just gonna look in writing settings to see if there's something in there. Okay, we'll deal with that later. All right, guys. Um, you can set up general options back over here and sort of get things into the way you want them to be. Um, you can do a lot of customization stuff with appearance, whether it's setting up different themes, customizing sort of like just aspects of your site's identity and how you want things to appear. Um, I'm actually going to show you how to do one more thing, and then I'm going to get off of this because I can already feel myself lagging, and I have a feeling you guys are probably lagging as well. So you'll notice that over here on the side, there are all these various little menu bars, and they're actually not very helpful for most of the things you want to do in this site. So what I recommend is actually editing the widgets here by removing them. This just gets rid of some visual noise on the side of your web page. All of these are kind of like meta text links that are intended to give your site a little bit more navigational oomph. But if you're not using them, they're just extraneous elements. So I really recommend getting rid of them. All right, so if I click on this, I should be able to see this eventually. Ridiculous tech problems. There we go. Okay, so now I've created a really rough-hewn website that is really just stripped down to its essentials, and yet if you were to turn something like this in, as long as it actually had an appropriate self-reflective letter, not like something that looks like this, but sort of like a long, maybe like 2 to 3 page letter that really talks about your experience in the class, its impact on your writing, and the way that your writing relates to the course learning outcomes, you would probably end up with a really good portfolio. It doesn't need to be crazy fancy. It just needs to be navigable, and you need to be able to sort of like put everything on a website and make sure that your reviewers can easily find that material by doing things like clicking through your menus here. I'm hoping this was helpful, but there is almost always something unforeseen in any of these videos that I will probably need to come back and address later. So if there is anything that you would like me to address, please send me an email. You can leave it in the comments of this video, but I'll be blunt. I kind of actively turn off comments on YouTube because I'm getting botted so hard on this thing. I'm just that cool, I guess. So the best way for you to ask me stuff like this is to just go on to your email, send me a message, and I'll create another video creating a tutorial that hopefully addresses whatever concerns you have. I'm going to try and figure out how to do things like customize fonts, but I feel like we covered most of the basics. Just going to check my lecture notes one last time before I move on. Yeah, I think we're good. So this is really all you need to do. You can create your entire site in probably a few hours. In fact, I'd say that you can probably spend, if you spend equal amounts of time on your meta text, your self-reflection letter, sorry, I use those terms interchangeably, and the entire generation of your website, you will probably end up doing really well on this assignment. So, yeah, that's hopefully reassuring. All in all, I think this whole thing should maybe take you 8 working hours, and since it's due on March 21st, or May 21st, sorry, that should be fairly attainable for everyone. But again, if you do have any questions or concerns, please send me an email and I will get to responding to your questions as soon as I can. All right, have a great day.